to begin this session of the conference. Take your seats, please. Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to the conferences. This is the second day of the conference. First of all, thank to the colleagues of the University of Caen and the Yale University, Tassos and Vasilis. The title of the conference today of the session is Phenolic Compounds, Individualization of Synergistic Effects, Current State and Future Direction. I am Alessandro Leone of the University of Bari, Department of the Agriculture, Environmental Sciences, and the topic of my research is about the mechanical aspects in the fields and mechanical aspects in agri-food industry. In particular, my topic is about the machine and plants for olive oil extraction. Today we have a particular topic. The topic is the phenols compound. Yesterday we have listened some presentation about the interaction of the phenols compound and the health. But because the phenols is considered by the world scientific community to be an excellent health component of the olive oil, but also it is considered a distinctive element of the olive oil compared to the other vegetable oils. And I think that in addition is also a good system to increase the market strategy, to increase the marketable of the olive oil. So today we will discuss about these topics, and because if on the one hand it is very important to know the phenols content and it's important to know the olive oil composition, this is right, but on the other hand it is important to know how we can preserve the phenols compounds from the field to the table, or according with the European Committee strategies, to the farm to fork. Each steps are critical points for the phenols compound. For example, I don't know, in the field, the right choose of the variety, the right choose of the maturity index is a critical point. And after in the mill, the choose of the right machines, the right plant, and the right choose of the process parameters is a critical point for the phenols composition, for the phenols compound. At the end, is the last critical point is the right olive oil conservation technique until the mill to the table. Wow. And some of these points we can address during the speakers, during the presentation of our speakers. Today we have 5 speakers. 2 are in a virtual way and 3 are here. Professor Maurizio Servili of the University of Perugia, Italy. Dr. Pablo Juliano, that is a member of the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, Melbourne, Australia. I want to check if Pablo is here. It's possible to work the connection with Pablo. Okay, the third speaker is Antonia Tamborrino of the University of Bari, Aldo Moro. The fourth is Dr. Mark Duncan, that is here, of the MassWerx Inc., California. And the last speaker is Arturo Cert Ventulá, professor ad honorem of the Instituto della Grasa of Sevilla. The 3 speakers will talk about technological innovation in olive oil extraction process and their interaction on the phenols content. But the last 2 speakers will talk about olive oil composition, phenolic composition, and the system, the methodology for their detection in the laboratory. Okay, 35 minutes for each speaker, and we can start with Professor Maurizio Servili. Please, Maurizio, when you want. Maurizio Servili is a full professor at the Department of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences of the University of Perugia. The main topics of his research are the study of phenolic and volatile compounds over several food, basically virgin olive oil, processing of virgin olive oil, development of the instrumental methods of the food quality analysis, development of the prediction models of the quality deterioration of the olive oil. The title of his presentation is High Vacuum Technologies, Impact on Virgin Olive Oil, Yield and Quality. Please, Maurizio.
Thank you, Alessandro. It's a large quantity of things in my presentation.
You have a big CV. Any questions from the public? Okay, Tassos. Please, Tassos. Take a microphone, please. Microphone? Okay. Microphone, come here. Microphone? Okay. Microphone, please, in this way.
That was very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your amazing presentation. Maybe it's a question towards the end of this session. However, I've been studying aldehydes for all my research life. And aldehydes are very highly reactive molecules. So my question is, we're trying to improve the aroma, and we have a lot of aldehydes in there. Could these aldehydes harm the beneficial effects of the other compounds by interacting by several biomolecules? And that's my question.
So, it's a very interesting question. But aldehydes interfere with the phenols. There is some results, scientific results about this point that show that there is a positive interference between aldehydes and the phenols in terms of aroma recognition and aromatic level of the oil. In fact, the most flavored oil in general are also rich in phenolic compound, and there is an optimization of the impact. Phenols improve the impact of volatile compound and the interaction, probably work in the equilibrium level between the part that is soluble in the oil and the part that are in the edge space of the oil. But it's an interesting point.
Second question.
Good morning. Mauricio, in your opinion, a reduction of 10% of volatiles, since we have as well a reduction of acetic acid and ethanol that many times overlaps the fruitiness perception, it's going to be significant in terms of sensorial perception?
Yes, but it's significant in the positive way. In other words, when you have a small reduction of volatile compound of the flavor, but you reduce also the compound of flavor, you have a raffination of the aroma. And as consequence, for the effect in the oil, it's the overall effect in the volatile perception is positive, it's not negative. But Of course, when you have the olives that is not completely in the optimal condition, it's not a very fermented olives. It's just the olives that you can see when you have just 20 hours of storage with temperature in around 25-30 degrees. In this case, you have just a little production of fermentation, and in this case, you have a good effect about the volatile compound and the composition. And for this reason, the perception in the aromatic evaluation improves. It's a good effect, not only for phenols.
Okay, third questions, Domenico.
First, thank you for the presentation. It was very, very nice, even for somebody like me who doesn't know anything about these things. But very good, thank you. The question is, you didn't mention anything about cost, the economic aspect of your technology, which is wonderful. Can you say something?
This is another topic.
No, it's a good topic. It's a good topic. So the cost is...
it's okay.
The cost, of course, improve, but oil yield improve. And as consequence, the balance, the economical balance is between the improvement of oil yield and the level of cost, the improvement of cost. The improvement of oil yield is between 8 kilogram per ton until 22 kilogram per ton. It's not low, And in this condition, if you have an improvement of cost, it's possible to neutralize. Good, neutralize.
Okay, other question? The last.
Just one more question. Okay. It was always a hammer mill, no? That you're using a hammer mill before the MassWerx? It's you're using a hammer mill.
Okay.
The crusher.
The pressure?
The crusher to crush the
the
olives.
crusher?
It was a hammer mill.
It was an hammer crusher, yeah.
Yeah, and you've never done a combination to see if there's a difference using a stone?
No, there is some there is some trial that are not reported here. There was performed using stoned olives, not crushing over crushing using a hammer crusher, but using the stoning processing. And we still study this kind of approach because you have, in any case, also when you use the stoning, the main problem of the stoning process is the oil yield, no? Because you have a reduction of oil yield, but you have an increase of quality of oil, of course. In this case, when you use in vacuum in the stoned olives, you have an improvement of olive oil yield that is similar to the regular process when you're using the total, the integral crusher. And for this reason, this is another opportunity, very interesting in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much, Maurizio. The second speaker is Dr. Pablo Juliano of the CSIRO in Melbourne, Australia. I don't know if Pablo is here because he's connecting virtual way. Hi, Pablito. How are you?
Hi, Alessandro and everyone.
Are you ready?
Good to be here.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Pablo is a PhD in food engineering in Washington State University, and now is a leader of the food processing and supply chains group in CSIRO. His research includes the area of edible oil extraction, food losses minimization and transformation. The title of the presentation is Industrial Demonstration of the Megasonic Technology to Maximize Oil Recovery. Okay, Pablo, please, when you want.
Thank you, Alessandro. Can you see the slides?
Yes, it's okay.
Yes, excellent. Okay, so I will be talking about a technology that we've been developing for a number of years. Is around the Megasonic technology, and it's also around increasing yield, but also we've seen benefits in terms of enhancing phenolic compounds in the oil as well. So we'll tell you a bit about the journey on how we went. But first, for those who are not familiar with ultrasound, just some basic information. When we're talking about low frequency ultrasound, and ultrasound are pressure waves, right, that are generated from a transducer into a medium. Generally, it could be airborne, it could be water-based. What is often seen in the literature is the use of what they call high-power ultrasound, which is around 20 to 100 kilohertz. It can be with sonotros, but nowadays they have also designed tubes that have smaller transducers all around the tubular area, and that's in the external part. And basically you have a greater uniformity. So what happens when you use, let's say, high power and low frequency ultrasound is that you create larger bubbles, and ultrasound is around creating a phenomenon that is called cavitation, and it's cavitation bubbles, which is basically bubbles that open and close, and we are talking about a micron bubble that is going to implode strongly and violently, and it's going to create temperatures of, they say in the micro world, around 1,000 degrees C. These sort of let's say small grenade bombs that will go into your microstructure are going to generate surface damage and are going to generate also emulsification sometimes. But it has been also demonstrated that it can increase phenolic compound in olive oil, and also it can increase extractability or oil yield. Then we talked about intermediate frequencies between 100 to 400 kilohertz up to let's say 1 megahertz. There is a possibility, and even at below 100, there is a possibility of creating what is called free radicals. And this is something that is obviously a worry to anyone who wants to make an oil and apply ultrasound, because those radicals can impact and can create auto-oxidative reactions in the oil. In order to trigger these reactions, you need a lot of energy. And these technologies are very much, to make them economical, you need to find the balance between the amount of kilojoules per kilo of ultrasound that you're putting in the system, and how those kilojoules per kilo are going to be economical, because that's going to be dictated by the amount of transducers that you need to put into the system, and obviously in the residence time in terms of ultrasound treatment. So sometimes this is not a big issue, and we haven't seen this to be, and on the contrary, we've seen benefits, and also the fact that you can enhance your phenolic compounds in the extraction, counteract the auto-oxidation effects. But we at the levels of, as you scale up, you're reducing your specific energy, and you're wanting the technology to work with less kilojoules per kilo to make it economical. And then the risks of these reactions are decreased. And then we talk about 400 to 300 kilohertz. This is high frequency ultrasound. This technology we've been the first group that we started trying this from a large scale extraction. It has been used mainly in the microfluidics to basically separate red blood cells from fat, and this is used if you're going through surgery and they need, and you're starting to create as the blood, fat cells. They try to separate these fatty cells from the red blood cells. So what you create in these microfluidic systems is what's called a standing wave, where the more liquid particles go to the antinodes, and the solid particles go to the node. This principle also has been used when we were trying to separate milk fat from milk, and this is, for example, an example where we started doing the research here in this field. So I'm going to go from there in the journey that we did in terms of getting this technology. The first thing is this is a technology that is around a physical aid to an existing process. It doesn't work by itself. You need, but basically the objective is a physical aid to increase oil recovery or separate the oil faster. And basically, at the beginning of the research, we were also looking at, how those trapping mechanisms were working in terms of coalescing oil droplets and enhancing those oil droplets to separate. But there is also other phenomena that is around microjets. So and I was talking about really large bubbles that happen at low frequency ultrasound. As you increase the frequency, you don't give enough time for those bubbles to create. So what you have is greater number of smaller bubbles that are creating this sort of microjets. And what you do is you are siphoning into the cell structure and sort of removing and cleaning out the oil from the oil bodies, let's say, from the vegetable structure. So this is one example of a milk emulsion with with a hydrous milk fat that has been colored, and you can see this is the banding that is caused on a larger scale. When you turn it off, then you start seeing that banding separating, and then you see a layer of thicker cream fat form. And you also see, that we have proven this with milk. But obviously, today we are talking about a system in terms of that you have a pre-macerated oil-bearing fruit, because we have found a number of applications. You apply the Megasonic system to predispose or precondition in another way, the material, and then it goes into either gravity or separation and centrifugation to have oil recovery. So for those who are not familiar with the technology readiness level definition, what we've been going through basically the basic principle to the invention, to the proof of concept, bench scale research, pilot scale, and we were able to prove the concept to a larger scale. So at the moment, we are trying to find ways, and I'll show you through another slide on getting to the next TRL level. So when we started the ultrasound research, we did a number of proof of concept trials. We started with the palm oil industry because it's one of the largest oils in the world. There was interest from the industry, and basically we were able to do the proof of concept on a lab scale using a few grams of sample. But basically, when you do the proof of concept, you apply a lot of energy, and you see those effects when you basically are separating very fast the material. So we've done a number of trials at lab scale with coconut, olive, canola, and avocado oils as well. And this is a lot of work that CSIRO does. CSIRO is Australia's national research agency. We do a lot of collaborations internationally with different universities. And then basically you move into sort of the lab scale, into the batch type scale, and these are some of the examples of, and then you go into continuous scale. So all of these aspects of engineering requires a lot of putting together transducer plates that look like this, and basically creating situations where you are isolating the transducer so it stays cool, if it's a hot process, or you can have a cooling system inserted. So we spend a lot of time creating this for the palm oil industry, and there are factories now running with Megasonic reactors to enhance greater oil. So now I will give you the context of what we've done in olive oil. We started with a 1 kilo reactor. Basically, this is the transducer device, and we put a reflector on top, and then you have some of the crushed paste. And in here, well, we started seeing additional oil recovery, and then we went into different trials across the time. So we had Australian companies that were supporting us in doing trials with this sort of Megasonic unit, which was the first system that we tried. And then we were very lucky to meet Alessandro and the rest of the team, and I will tell you more about the story of how we worked in Italy doing other trials and trying the technology, and then we went into a larger scale 3 ton an hour trial, and this is where we are at in terms of demonstrating the technology. And at the moment we are looking into optimizing the size of the vessel and looking at opportunities for prototyping and scale up. Something we also did was trying to get the back of Australian processors as well that were interested in this space, and the technology actually has been recognized through a science award in Australia, which is rare that it is given in food technology, which is good. But in terms of the project itself, this has been a collaboration with a number of people from not only CSIRO, but we had Boundary Bend as is the 50% of the olive oil of Australia is produced by this company, and we had experts that are internationally recognized. They also consult to many companies internationally, and we had the team of Alessandro, Roberto, and Antonia, who is talking after me, and Professor Cervili as well in here. So we had also a collaboration with the University of Uruguay, and with a big team that provided support, and a number of other students from other universities and other supporters. So the first trial was basically around looking at a batch 300 kilo of olive fruits. In principle, we were not really sure if we needed to add water, so we added water, and basically we started seeing some additional recovery, and that was because we were trying to understand if we were under the assumption that the ultrasound required less solids to work, and that basically was this device that had a combination of different transducers with different kilohertz, but then when we moved into the next trial, we started doing the trials directly with the paste. In this particular trial, we did a combination of equipment. We had several objectives. One was to try the malaxer in combination with the Megasonic unit, but also we wanted to try a microwave technology as a replacer of the malaxer, and that was the intention, to create a continuous process where you will not have that batch step, and then we'll go from the crusher directly into a tube that will be heating the paste and pre-treating it, and in very short time, and then the second question was, can this add another benefit in terms of enhancing olive oil yield? So this was with some of the Coratina olives, and it was in a sort of like unripe state. What we found was a very good extractability given by the Megasonic technology. We also so that was already good, and this is not this in terms of oil in the paste and not ground, and basically. And we also saw, the opportunity to aid the microwave technology into a much higher yield and a faster process and continuous process. So what we saw in general with the oils that we obtained with the different combinations of technology is that we did a shelf life study. That was the Uruguay team. And we didn't see any sensory effects from our trained olive oil panel in 12 months, but we did see enhanced phenolics and preservation of tocopherols. And interestingly, also we saw some decrease of the waxes, and that one we don't have an explanation for that one. But basically the interesting part is that during the shelf life, you have the total polyphenols, and you see that consistently the control was less than the other technology combinations, and in particular you can see how they maintain that extra phenolic content across the 12 months. This is more detail from that also was provided by the teams from Italy, and basically we had the different the breakdown into the different phenolic compounds and the total phenolics, and basically you can see how different types of those phenolic compounds were significantly increased as well, in some not. The other aspect is also, other parameters, which is the traditional one, like free acidity, peroxide value, induction time, deacylglycerides and volatiles were also unchanged. What we also did, and might not be too relevant for this topic today, but was further understanding in terms of the sound attenuations. How much can the sound transfer through the paste? And we did a lot of work around putting hydrophones in the paste in different reactors, and basically what we saw is, basically the conclusion is that it was not so much that that it was very difficult to obtain a standing wave in this system, and we had some of the physics team. What we saw is that the effect that is predominant from these studies is more so the bubbles and the smaller bubbles that are creating that enhancement in the olive oil in the paste. So when then we went, we were faced with the challenge that you've proven the technology at 350 kilos an hour. Now you need to scale up. How fast can you scale up? Can you prove the technology at 3 tons an hour? So we didn't want to create too many shortcuts in here. So what we did was a bit of a direct scale up of the technology, and that created a relatively big unit. But that was just with the aim of proving that we could have extra recovery. And basically those were four reactors that we tried different combinations in terms of parallel and series, and that was placed right after the malaxer. The crusher is behind the wall, and those were trials that happened in Australia. So what we found, and we tried a number of varieties. In this case, as opposed to Italy, that was Coratina. Here we were mostly with Barnea, Picual, higher maturity index. So that was something that we could test that it was working, and we saw an increase In both cases, it was quite similar in terms of the oil recovery that we were finding. We also decreased significantly the ultrasound energy from 100 kilojoules to 10 kilojoules. And this is something that we are finding that is similarly happening in the palm oil. As you increase the flow rate, the ultrasound need is less. So if we take a plant that produces 1,000 liters of oil per year, that translates into a recovery of US dollars, $270 to $300K. And we did the math, and we're looking at a 2 to 3 years payback time with the reactor the way we have it, but we need to do obviously further optimization to make it practical and usable in the space provided. And something that we also asked was around reducing can you use it instead of enhancing the yield? Can you use it to decrease the malaxation time? And we did different malaxation times, 60 minutes, 90 minutes malaxations, and then 60 minutes with the Megasonic treatment. Interestingly, the apparent viscosity showed that we had very similar apparent viscosity between the 90-minute malaxation time and the Megasonic treatment, which was indicative of a potential similar yield, even though you apply 60 minutes in here. And this is what we found. So basically, when you are doing no Megasonics and then you apply Megasonics, you see an increased yield. When you further malax, you see that there was no statistical difference, but we saw an indication that basically the technology was operating at a shorter time as opposed to and provided advantages in there. And that was actually something that it was further towards the end when we were getting olives that were at a higher maturity index of 4.1 and 5. In these trials, we're still looking. We don't have the data at the moment in terms of the phenolics. It's something that we need to look at. I believe preliminary data shows that we could not see the effect, so we need to go back into understanding: is it really an effect that is variety dependent? Is it because we are using we use an early stage ripeness as opposed to a later stage? What is it that determines that the technology is going to enhance those compounds? But basically, in summary, we are talking about a technology that provides enhanced oil recovery, and we've also proved that through reduced paste viscosity, can reduce the malaxation time. In certain trials, we could see improvements in phenolic compounds, preservation of other antioxidants such as tocopherols, and decreased waxes. Most importantly, I think the opportunity of bringing microwaves, and I believe heat exchangers as well, and Antonia will talk about this after me. I think it's a good opportunity, to sort of create this sort of continuous processes and create a more speedy opportunity to maintain those volatiles that Professor Servili was talking before. Okay, so with this, I would like to thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, Pablo, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Any question from the public about the Megasonic system? Okay, Alexandra De Varenne, microphone for you.
In Australia, in the large-scale testing that you were talking about, did they use enzymes, which is, I know, a standard practice there, or did you ask them to avoid the enzymes so it's more comparable to the European?
That's a great question. We did trials with and without enzymes. I thought it was more relevant to this forum that was in Europe, sort of, / US, presenting the information of the trials without enzymes. So we asked for this, but then we did further trials with enzymes, and we also saw benefits of the technology. And the company was extremely excited to hear this, because it's complementing the work that the enzymes were doing in those particular trials.
Other questions?
About the
Maurizio.
enzymes, you can consider that if you consider the typology of paste that we are seeing, that was a maturity index very high, the impact of eventually addition of external enzymes is irrelevant in terms of oil yield. As consequence, the enzymes working well when you have the very unripened olives. In this case, you have an improvement of oil yield using external enzymes. But in the case that you are studied, the level of maturation of the fruit was very high, and as consequence, the external enzymes is not relevant, because the internal enzymes, the endogenous enzymes, is completely able to degrade the cell walls.
I agree, and we need to do more trials of this.
Okay. Pablo, I have another question for you.
Okay, you should know the answer then.
My question is, in which kind of the olive oil processing do you think that this technology could be addressed? For example, high quality production or all type of the olive oil production quality? In which kind do you think?
Well, it's a physical process, right? So I think I think it should apply to all kinds. As long as it's related to the economics, it's related to the throughput. It's not. If you're a small olive oil processor, probably it's too expensive. So when we started seeing the return on investment is when you have about 1 ton an hour type process that it sort of the economics work. So yeah, I'm not sure if I am answering your question, Alessandro.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's okay for
I mean, what is important is to understand is the price of the olive oil going to change if you have higher phenolic content? If you have a price advantage, obviously, the technology works in enhancing phenolics. Well, then I think it's obviously a plus. Yeah.
Okay, Pablo. Thank you very much. There are other questions or not? Okay, Pablo, thank you very much. The next speaker is Professor Antonia Tamborrino of the Department of Agriculture and Environmental Science of the University of Bari. Antonia is here, okay. She has a PhD in agro-food industry plan, and her research focused on the plant and equipment for agro-food production, especially for olive oil industry, until the design of the prototypes, plant, and their use for industrial demonstration. The title of the presentation is Innovative Heat Exchanger for Enhancing Olive Oil Quality and Process Efficiency. Please, Antonia, when you want.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Antonella, for your very interesting presentation. Is there any question? Okay, one question, then stop because we are over time. One question, please. Microphone.
Thank you, Professor Antonia, for a very interesting presentation. I have a question for you, but also for Pablo and for Maurizio particularly. Has work been done on combining any of these techniques with a preliminary decortication stage to strip the seeds out from the skin and pulp and to avoid the enzymatic activity once the seeds have been broken?
Ok, vuoi...
Yes.
Si complica molto l'impianto. Si complica molto l'impianto.
The sound was very...
Sound is not good. Maurizio, can you answer?
Dice se c'è...
Si complica un po' l'impianto.
Depende. Yeah, in relationship to the traditional one, yes, but you can consider also that the important effect in terms of improvement of oil yield and also olive oil quality. Cioè, you can consider that the olive oil technology was a very, very traditional process. And this traditional process, it's remained stable for a lot of times. In the last 50 years, we are just modifying in the past the decanter between 3 phases and 2 phases. Just this. In another 30 years, we are just close the malaxer to reduce oxidation. And but now the industrial technology of virgin olive oil can be considered at the same level of other typology of industry, such as winemaking and the other typology like this, because the main the aim is to improve oil yield, because this is important for the economical point of view, but also to improve a lot the quality of the oil, mainly for the health point of view. These 2 points is very important. The last part of the work is related to the valorization of byproduct. This is another important new approach to the technology that is in combination with the new approach that you can see here.
Okay, thank you very much, Maurizio. Thank you very much, Antonia, for this presentation. And if you want for other questions, you can contact directly the speaker and by using email or other system. Thank you very much, Antonella. Okay, the next presentation, next speaker is Dr. Mark Duncan, is CEO of the MassWerx in California. MassWerx, please, Mark, is developing novel approaches to chemical analysis by combining ambient mass spectrometry and powerful machine learning strategy to obtain practical analysis methods to complex problems before in clinical testing and recently also in food testing. Duncan is also a chief scientific officer of target discovery and adjunct professor of the Yale University. The title of the presentation is Practical Approaches to Olive Oil Analysis, Utilization Mass Spectrometry, a focus on the polyphenols determination. Please, Mark.
Thank you, Alessandro, and good morning. I'm going to modify my talk in the light of what you've heard this morning and in the light of the presentations that have come previously. But let me give you some introduction to myself and what I'm going to talk to you about. Most of you, if not all of you, know more about olive oil, its production, its marketing, its sales, its biological effects than I do. I come here to show you what we've been doing and show you what we're trying to achieve, and I'm interested to get your feedback and your comments on the nature of the work that we're doing and why we're doing it. So this is something that we've heard a lot about, and Mauricio gave us some excellent background on this morning. But let me give you my perspective as someone from outside this field about what are phenols and or polyphenols, and how and why would you want to measure them. The molecule on the right is the molecule phenol. Some of you, but not all of you, will be used to seeing these chemical structures that organic chemists and analytical chemists draw all the time. And so this simple molecule, phenol, which is an aromatic ring bearing a hydroxyl substituent, is called phenol. And if that's incorporated into another molecule, that molecule can also be called a phenol. If there are multiple forms of this molecule, then it can be called a polyphenol. But there are other definitions of this general class, polyphenols. And as you've seen many times over at this conference and previously, there are many phenols. There are many polyphenols. And on this side, you see just some examples of those. So we're going to look for, in all of these molecules, this common structural feature, and you can see it here, you can see it here and here, you can see it here, 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 not there, but here. So by definition, all of these molecules are phenols, and if there are multiple phenol groups, then they're polyphenols, by some definitions. And again, as you've heard this morning, there are multiple closely related structures that occur in olives, and their levels and their forms change as the olives ripen or are processed to produce olive oil. So here you see some forms where there's a glucose substituent attached on here. This enzyme can cleave off that glucose substituent to give you an alternative molecule. This whole alanoic acid side chain can be cleaved off to give you these simple molecules, hydroxytyrosol and tyrosol. So there are a plethora, a large number of molecules closely related in structure, and each of these, as we also heard this morning, has a different bioavailability, a different concentration in the oil or the product. They're taken up at different rates and to different extents, and they have different biological activities and functions. The situation gets even more complex, and without going into the chemistry in any detail, you can see that there are both open and closed chain forms of these molecules, and the number of combinations and permutations of the class phenols and polyphenols very quickly becomes very large. So the next question is, we know we want to measure these because we associate the presence and the levels of these with positive physiological or pharmacological actions. So how do we measure these phenols? And the answer is there are many methods that measure phenols, and here are some of them described in outline on this slide. The most commonly used method, certainly historically, is the first, where a spectrophotometric or a spectrophotometer is used to measure the sample. And as you can see, as I've put on the right here, I'm not very good with these pointers, I'm sorry. This is a method that was developed in the early 1900s, and it's fast, and it's cheap, and it's simple, and it gives you a measure not of each of the constituent phenols, or polyphenols if you prefer, but a measure of the total number, or the total polyphenol content, a vague and nondescript term. The alternative, an alternative method is chromatography in some form or another, usually liquid chromatography, which is used to separate in time the components of the sample, and then those components are detected by some method, either diode array detection, mass spectrometry, tandem mass spectrometry, sometimes called MSMS, high-resolution mass spectrometry, or high-resolution tandem mass spectrometry. The point is, the chromatography is the mechanism by which that complex class of phenols is separated one by one in time, and then this detection device, the mass spectrometer or the diode array detector, can be used to independently verify and quantify those components of the sample. You have heard at other points in time, I'm sure, and read about the application of nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy to determine polyphenols, and this is a powerful tool that's generally restricted to quite elaborate research settings, and the most powerful of these instruments are expensive and require quite sophisticated and well-trained operators to generate the data, but they generate very high quality data on polyphenols. There is also a technique called near-infrared spectroscopy, or NIR, and this is a fast, affordable, and powerful method of measuring total polyphenols. And what I'm going to talk to you about by way of introduction on this slide are some other mass spectrometric approaches to measuring phenols. Now, I just want to give you my bias and show you why I have a bias. I don't think the term total polyphenols in many contexts is particularly meaningful. It's meaningful if it's a regulatory requirement. It might be meaningful if you're using it for marketing purposes. It might be meaningful, as we heard in the last talk and some other talks, if you want to talk about extraction efficiencies in a general sense. But let me show you why there might be some confusion when talking about physiological or pharmacological actions, why total polyphenols might be a very misleading term. I can't move on this slide. I've done very well at moving slides when I didn't intend to previously, but now I can't move it at all. Either forwards or backwards. Did I turn it off? Thank you. Okay, my fault, as usual. So we also heard about, in the first talk this morning, about the class steroids, or sterols, and this is another time where organic chemists, or natural product chemists, look for a specific feature in a class of molecules, in this case, the steroid nucleus. So here, the steroid nucleus is 4 rings, 2 6-membered rings, 1 5-membered ring, joined in this configuration, and all members of the class steroids have this particular nucleus. And so I've put on the right-hand side of this slide a number of different steroids. But the important point to note is included in this table. Cholesterol is present in all animal cells. Progesterone is only present in females, made by the ovaries, and its levels increase during pregnancy, and it's a female hormone. Cortisol is a stress hormone released by the adrenal glands, and it is our mechanism with dealing with acute stresses. Testosterone, also a steroid, and as you can see, all very similar in structure, is a male sexual hormone made by the testes. Cortisone is a prodrug used to treat inflammation and used as a drug in general purposes, quite commonly in medicine. And estradiol, another steroid, is a female hormone. But as you'll note, if you look at the concentrations of these components, there is over 1 million-fold more of cholesterol in humans than there is of any of these other biologically active, potent biologically active, and profoundly important molecules. So to measure total steroids in the context of trying to understand human physiology and medicine would be a profound mistake. So now what I'm going to do, and I'm very conscious of the time, and since I'm not the expert in this area, I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I'm going to give you a brief introduction to how we have tackled the problem of looking at the chemistry of olive oil samples and measuring not only the primary components, the tags, but also some of the other components, including the phenols. And we approach this with these 3 points in mind, that the current methods for testing, whether it's as a service or that are available perhaps to you as a grower, producers, importers, distributors, the current methods are slow, they're costly, and they're inflexible. That they give you back, if you get a lot of tests done, a huge amount of information which you have to interpret, and unless expert in the field, sometimes that interpretation can be confounding. And the development of these tests, so if you wanted to develop these tests and run them in your own lab, whether it be the NMR tests or these mass spectrometric tests, require considerable expertise. The development time is very considerable, and the resources, both in terms of equipment and personnel, is also substantial. So I'm going to spend almost all of my time, the remaining time, on this slide to tell you about the method that we use, and then I'm going to go through very quickly some examples of the application of the method so you can see some of the data that we've generated. But there are 3 elements to the method that we've developed and are now using that I'd like you to appreciate, all illustrated, all illustrated on this slide. So the first point is that we use mass spectrometers, but in contrast to the mass spectrometers that are used by others, there is no chromatography. So the primary tools that we use are MALDI mass spectrometry, and here you can see a MALDI mass spectrometer. For reference, this is a standard desktop computer, so you can see that this instrument is maybe 2.5 times the height of that, and about the same width. So this is a small instrument that could sit on a tabletop or a benchtop. The other instrument that we use is this one to the right over here, which is a triple quadrupole mass spectrometer made by Agilent. It's small, also could fit on a desktop, and on the top of this is something that's called a dart source that's used to ionize the molecules that we're analyzing. So the first element of the method is that we use fast, because we don't have any chromatography, fast mass spectrometry, and we generate chemical fingerprints. Those fingerprints, I apologize for being so bad with this. Those fingerprints look like this. So here are the fingerprints generated for the analysis of some, in this instance, olive oil samples. And you can see on this axis, the y-axis, the x-axis, the mass of the molecule that's being measured. So that's the weight, the atomic mass, molecular weight of the molecule. On the y-axis, you see peaks going upwards, and the height of that peak is roughly related to the amount of that molecule. So a large peak means a lot of a molecule. In the case of this blue spectrum down here, at this low mass, and then some other components at higher masses of lower relative amounts, and then some low abundance components here. This sample is different, and so is this. So these mass spectra could be called fingerprints, and they're generated very quickly. They're generated within the space of a few seconds or minutes for the sample that's analyzed. So we take the sample, there is some minor pre-processing, but then we generate these spectra, and we store those spectra away in a database. Also added to that database is really important information that you or someone else provides about the nature of the sample. Monocultivar, mixed, what year, when in the year, all sorts of other information that may be relevant about that sample. So we call that metadata because it's not the spectral data, but it's associated with the spectral data and stored away in the database, linked closely to that mass spectrum or those mass spectra. And then the third component of the system is machine learning or artificial intelligence. What we do is train a computer to recognize within the spectra information that may define some of those metadata characteristics. In other words, is this a new or an old oil? Is this a fresh or rancid oil? All sorts of parameters like that are linked away, and the computer learns to look for the features in the spectra that tell us about that particular sample. And then with that simple strategy, and it really is fairly simple, we can look at all sorts of different problems illustrated on the right-hand side of this slide. So now I'm going to go through this very quickly, far too quickly, but really the overarching point is what sort of things do we do or could we do, and what do the data look like? So here you see a range of different oils that were measured, and this region, this is mass again, and this is abundance on this scale, and each of the different oils, avocado, sunflower, peanut, sesame, canola, are all different colors. So you can see that each of these oils is represented by a different tag profile. And if we won't go into it in great detail, but just to talk about it in overview, if one of these oils happened to be adulterated with another of those oils, even in the low percentage amounts, that can be detected within this analysis, down to about 1 or 2%, and within that first analysis run of a few minutes of sample analysis time. We also analyze the same sample in the mass region for looking at the phenols, and we use both the MALDI approach and the DART approach, and here you can see the mass spectra of a typical olive oil sample showing you peaks where the height of the peak represents the abundance, the amount, and the mass along here defines that is that particular phenol. And here's the same sample run by two different methods, MALDI and DART. We can go on with other examples. We can look for differences in these spectra that are related to the grade of olive oil, or not just the source of the tags. And here's some representative data. But as we run these and we put it in the information into the metadata base about each of these samples, the computer is learning progressively what to look for in these fingerprints to characterize something as, for example, adulterated, or as, for example, aged versus fresh. And we use all of the data. This is not something that we drive or control. We tell the machine learning algorithm to use all the data in the spectrum to look at the differences. And here you can just see a representative example of how stark the differences are in some of these components when we look at various grades of olive oil. There's absolutely no dispute about the differences that exist in the levels of these particular components, and that can be quantified and it can be reported out. Here's some more information, and I'm going to go through these, as I said, very quickly on shelf life, because if you're not interested in this, I don't need to bore you with the details. If it does interest you, then you're welcome to talk to me about it later on, and we can share these data with you. Here's some more data on shelf life, but again, all you need to see is that the spectra, the fingerprint in certain regions, is markedly different depending on, in this case, an aged oil in blue and a fresh oil in red. You can see, excuse me, you can see the differences, and you can see that the computer algorithm can learn about looking for these specific differences at these specific mass values and train itself, and thereafter take on any fresh new sample, and cumulatively it learns. So the more samples it's exposed to, and the better the metadata provided to the algorithm, the more sophisticated the machine learning becomes, and the more parameters it can address. And we can use and do use standard statistical methods to evaluate whether these differences are statistically valid or not. I'm sorry? Yeah, I'm almost there. So here again, different compounds, different data, but the same sort of differences. Here's some samples that are run very recently where we've quantified, in this case, tyrosol, and you can see we've looked at some olive oil from this year's harvest and compared it to other years, and you can see the differences there, and you can look at this, whether these are statistically different or not. I won't go into this one in any detail at all because it's very preliminary data, but you can also take these chemical data and correlate them with sensory data. So if there's a sensory panel that's evaluated these samples, we can put that sensory data into the machine learning algorithm and then train the machine learning algorithm to distinguish the differences. I won't talk about this because this is really for the computer nerds who want to see these sorts of things, but the machine learning algorithm is built and resides in the internet and is accessible anywhere at any time and can do the analysis on any sample and report that data back to you, and you can look at it on your computer and see what the results are. And you can see that there are multiple algorithms, multiple machine learning tools that are used. This is the architecture of the machine learning approach. And this is kind of what the output looks like. You can pick, for example, a monitor varietal. You can pick data from the database and look at it, or you can run your sample and ask it to show what the best match is and to characterize the features on your sample as you look at it. So let's move on to the last slide. Here's the spectra that are stored in the database. Again, you can retrieve them instantly and look at the data, review it, make your own judgment or analysis of these spectra. And then we are building a range of fuel gauges so that you can, when compared with well-characterized samples, assess the freshness or any other parameter of the olive oil that you've run. So in summary, this is what we do. We need to work with people like you to fill the database with as many well-characterized oil samples as we can access. And we need all of the metadata, and we need the metadata to be right, because if we train on erroneous data, then the machine learning algorithms get confused. We need to generate high-quality spectra, and I think we're pretty good at that, and we can generate those very quickly, assess them statistically. We can run them in replicate and do these comparisons. And then over time, we have this machine learning process that we've got to analyze the data. That's where I'll end. I just wanted to show you what we're doing. I'm keen to get your feedback and interest or lack of in where we're headed. And I need to acknowledge on this slide the people in my lab at MassWerx that are doing this work. I should also tell you that MassWerx is a brand new company that's just been started. I'm the CEO of it. You won't find out anything about it other than what I've told you here as we incorporate the company and generate our website, but that's all happening as we speak. And I'd also like to thank and acknowledge Alessandro, one of your colleagues and friends who has been very helpful locally with sourcing us with samples and providing us with expert information. So on that, I'll say thank you again for your attention, and I'll also say thank you to the organizers, and in particular all the people here in Haiyan who've made us feel welcome and worked both directly with us and behind the scenes to facilitate this meeting. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Only one question. Domenico.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is a perspective of biomedical research. I'm not, involved in the industry. I think it's very interesting what you said. Your technology is possible. Use your technology to measure polyphenol in biological sample. You measure in olive oil. Yeah. Because one of the problems we have in our field is compliance. You give this olive oil, that olive oil, you treat, you see the mouse swim much better, whatever. How do you know? Can you measure them? How stable are they? If you're going to measure in the blood or in the tissue level, is it an easy task or it's complicated?
I'm not going to say it's an easy task, but it's doable and not all that complicated. And I should add, given your background and my background, that this all comes out of using these instruments and these general strategies in the development of biomarkers in clinical medicine. And so that's what we're doing all the time. And this is an extension of that work into another area that, frankly, I find interesting and rewarding as a change from looking at human blood and plasma.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
The last speaker is Arturo, Cert, Ventulá, Professor ad honorem. I'm sorry for the overtime. Thank you very much. One question? Okay.
Enhorabuena, Arturo, como siempre, enhorabuena. Estás al día, a pesar de que lleves 5 años sin estar en tu laboratorio. Te voy a hacer una pregunta que no lo he oído muy bien. Como tú sabes, yo no veo y no he podido ver las diapositivas, pero sí te he entendido. Si yo tengo un derivado secoroideo de hidroxitirosol y un derivado secoroideo con la misma isomerización en la cadena alquílica carboxílica de tirosol, la solubilidad de ambos en el aceite es idéntica.
Bueno, si son totalmente iguales, los dos compuestos iguales, entonces sí es más soluble el tirosol. El tirosol
pero no son idénticas las solubilidades.
No
es
son
decir,
idénticas.
Aquel que tiene menos polaridad tiende a irse más que el que tiene más polaridad. Entonces te hago otra pregunta. Si a lo largo del ciclo de mantenimiento del aceite uno es más susceptible de perder o uno es más lábil, es más ágil químicamente, es decir, la parte que contiene el hidroxitirosol, que además tiene un sabor totalmente diferente al equivalente derivado secoroideo de la misma isomerización con el tirosol, sus características organolépticas son completamente diferentes, ¿no? No vamos a entrar en más disquisiciones, ¿no? Cuando el oxígeno o la temperatura o el tiempo actúa sobre esos componentes menores que están en el aceite, aunque el oxígeno lo consumirán al principio, consumirá primero aquello que tiene derivados de hidroxitirosol antes de tirosol.
Exactamente, el oxígeno siempre, precisamente la capacidad antioxidante del hidroxitirosol es que entre los dos grupos orto H capta el oxígeno y lo deja allí retenido. Por tanto, Mientras que el tirosol no. El tirosol ya hemos visto
No
que no tiene capacidad.
No puede porque no tiene ese electrón solitario que quiere unirse al otro electrón y por tanto pasar a quinona. Bien, entonces ¿qué quiere decir? Que las características organolépticas de ese aceite, si hiciéramos un ratio ésteres de hidroxitirosol, ésteres de tirosol, ese ratio iría disminuyendo con el tiempo. Y el aceite cambiaría organolépticamente en el sentido de que aquellos argumentos organolépticos, veo que Cervili me dice que sí, no veo bien, pero sé que eres Cervili. Entonces, en el tiempo, es lógico que el aceite se vuelva plano, pero no pierda el picor. ¿Es correcto lo que estoy diciendo?
Sí, porque el picor es otra cosa. Yo creo que no está muy claro. No está muy claro lo que es el picor. Hombre, lo que sí está claro es lo que es el amargor.
En concreto, la olesceína es más inestable que el óleo cantal en las mismas condiciones de conservación. Sí. ¿Es esto?
This is good. Yeah.
Vale, luego el valor organoléptico del óleo cantal aguantará más que el de la olesceína. Eso es lo único que quería decir.
Depende of the typology of sensory evaluation, because the oleocantal is more closer to the bitterness, to the pungency, not to the bitterness.
Ecco, sono d'accordo con te?
Ok.
Il cantal del greco è picante.
Excuse me for the overtime. I suggest you to continue the conversation during the coffee break. Thank you very much for all. Thank you very much, Professor Cert, Maurizio, Mark, Antonia, and Pablo, and thank you for all. Now the coffee break. Thank you very much.